2019 ServSafe Practice Questions Exam Questions. A food handler is slicing roast beef continuously on a slicer for 6 hours. After 4 hours, the roast beef is removed and set aside while the slicer parts are being washed, rinsed, and sanitized. The meat is then put back on the slicer to continue slicing. What is the most serious risk of this procedure? Time temperature abuse of the roast beef. A common food allergen is found in tofu. When the water supply has been disrupted due to a natural disaster, an acceptable alternative is buying commercially bottled water. Which of the following pathogens is typically associated with temperature abuse when handling baked potatoes? Clostridium botulinum. Which item may a customer reuse at a self-service area? Drinking glass. A food handler is prepping a melon garnish. The food handler pulls the melon from the cooler and washes, slices, and plates the melon. At what point in the process must the food handler put on gloves? After washing the melon and before slicing it. What food should a guest with a food allergy avoid? Shrimp. Chemicals that can only be used by licensed pest control operators are considered restricted use pesticides. If found during a food safety inspection, which hazard is grounds for closing a food service operation? Significant lack of refrigeration. When food becomes unsafe, it is most often due to the people handling the food. What is the FDA requirement for an off-site caterer who will be serving food without temperature control? Provide written procedures, prepared in advance, made available upon request to authorities. What food safety rule must be consistently followed when handling ready-to-eat food? Wear single-use gloves. What is the minimum temperature allowed for the water in the wash compartment of a 3-compartment sink? 110-foot F. Tabletop equipment on legs requires a clearance of at least 4 in. A food service operation is using a high-temperature machine for washing utensils. How would an inspector verify the temperature of the water? By running a temperature recording instrument through the machine. Fully cooked ground beef should be stored above all raw meat. Which activity is part of the food defense program? Identifying and separating food that has been recalled. Food handlers should wash their hands between shaking hands with a guest and replenishing the food on a salad bar. Where does a food service operation get its water supply if the water must be regularly tested? Privately owned well. What is required in order for food displayed on a salad bar? All food must be protected by sneeze guards. Correctly freezing fish will help prevent viral infection. The sprayer attachment in the dishwashing area is hanging in a container filled with pre-soaking solution. Why is this a potential food safety hazard? Backflow of the solution into the sprayer. The gap between what food handlers are required to know to perform their jobs and what they actually know is called a training need. Live shellfish must be received at a temperature no higher than 45-foot F. Food has been honestly presented if it does not contain color additives. First aid must be administered when a hazardous chemical spills on a food handler's arms and face. From which document required to be on file in the food service operation can the first aid information be found? Safety Data Sheet, SDS. Which action should the person in charge take when a food handler has been diagnosed with an illness caused by Shigella spp? Exclude the food handler from work and notify the local regulatory authority. A food handler who cuts a finger while working must cover it with a bandage and another barrier. A food establishment must have procedures for employees to follow when cleaning up which of the following substances? Vomit and diarrhea. A backup of sewage in the operations storeroom would be a reason to contact the local regulatory authority because it is imminent health hazard. Partially thawed, torn packages of frozen steaks are delivered to an operation. The manager should reject the entire delivery. When purchasing a dishwasher, a manager can tell if it is in compliance with the regulatory authority by looking for an NSF seal of approval or a certification from ANSI on the dishwasher. An operation wants to hold food using time as a public health control. What must the label on the pan of food indicate? The 4-hour time when the food must be discarded. What food safety hazard can occur when solutions used to clean a frozen yogurt machine is not completely drained? Chemical contamination. In an operation where should pesticides be stored? Away from food items, in clearly marked labeled containers. Which sink should be used to empty mop buckets? Service. Which cleaning agent best removes baked on food? Abrasive cleaner. When serving a highly susceptible population, time as the control for safety should never be used for raw eggs. Who should be contacted before starting new construction or extensive remodeling of an existing facility? Local regulatory authority. A cook is preparing dinner for a local retirement residence. Which item should be removed from the menu? Sushi. Using hard water when preparing a sanitizing solution will cause the sanitizer to be less effective. How many days can time/temperature control for safety, TCS, foods safely be kept under refrigeration at 41°F? 7. A bimetallic stem thermometer should be easy to read with numbered markings. An example of monitoring a critical control point is measuring the temperature of poultry on a steam table at regular intervals. When transporting food, food holding compartments must be cleaned thoroughly and regularly.